Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining and welcome to Think Engage Thrive, another episode where we're always trying to bring you some great advice from some great entrepreneurs. And tonight we have a guy named, I'm going to butcher his last name, a Greek man, Manny Skevofilax. I hope I said that right, Skevofilax. But Manny he's been a business owner and he's a financial guy, a financial guru. He does a lot of coaching with small businesses, small to medium sized businesses, large businesses, and coaching them on financial metrics and how to really manage your business a bit better, really giving people more of a financial education, so to speak. But he really tries to get businesses to reach their highest potential. That's his whole focus. He's basically a CFO for hire, and doing quite well with it. His expertise, he's sought after by businesses everywhere. He grew up in business, so he understands it from the business owner's perspective, which is always helpful. He just wrote a book. I'm not sure if it's out yet. We'll talk to him about that. But good education, good discussion about finance, because let's face it, whether you're an entrepreneur, startup, whatever, you have to manage the financial metrics of your business, or else you'll never survive. Right? Now, true that we hear about businesses all the time that continually raise money and they're continually growing, but at the same time you still have to manage it. You still have to manage your sales, you have to manage your profitability, your gross profit, things like this. So you can't just be sort of willy-nilly. So it's an important aspect. I think sometimes entrepreneurs get tied up in developing the product and developing a great website and sort of lose sight of what's really has to happen, which is profit, because profit is oxygen. Without profit, the business can't sustain. So let's bring Manny in. We'll start talking to him. We'll get a beat on his background and his history, and we'll hear what Manny has to say. Manny, welcome. I don't know if I
Bill,
butchered
thank
your
you.
last name.
Thank you for having me. And it was just like you were pronouncing it in the Greek language. So outstanding.
Well, I'm glad I did that.
Mhm.
So why don't you take us back a little bit? Take us back to the beginning. Who's Manny? What has Manny done in his life, and how did he get here to this point?
Sure. Manny is the son of immigrants. Two Greek immigrants from an island in Greece named Carpathos came to the United States after World War II for a better life, and started in the restaurant business because back then a lot of people wanted, not taking direction very well, wanted to be their own boss, make a couple more dollars, right? It was very attractive, hard work, but attractive,
Very hard
from a,
work.
right? So I grew up in that restaurant business, learning about costs and pricing and things like that, how to take care of a customer so somebody else doesn't. And from there, I decided to make a career change. Actually, my parents told me we don't have $1 million to leave you. You better make sure you get an education. This is my immigrant parents, right? Because we were unable to finish our education because a war broke out. So I listened, and I was attracted to the restaurant business, Phil, because I could come home with cash in my pocket every day. But I was going to school, right? I got a bachelor's degree, and I decided to just keep working. I had no urge or interest. This was it. And then I changed my mind about 4 years after I got that degree. I was 29. I made a career change, went back to school, got a master's in finance, went and got a job at a bank based on my graduate school advisor's recommendation. She planned all this stuff out for me. I had no idea. So I
Wow.
worked in corporate banking for 10 years, had a lot of great teachers and mentors. And then I decided to hang my shingle out. And I have been, a business advisor for the past 21 years. I guide business owners on, maximizing profits and overcoming growth challenges.
That's fantastic. The restaurant business it's a difficult one. I grew up in the restaurant business.
Okay.
Similar to you, in the fact that that's what I thought my path was going to be. And I went to college, and when I was at college, I was working in restaurants and in hotels in Miami. and I
Mm,
decided, you know, I don't want to be working until 2 o'clock in the morning.
mm,
And then you get done working, and then everybody wants to go have a beer. And then the next
mhm.
thing you know, you're rolling in at 6 in the morning and you've got to start the workday again. And it just wasn't a good lifestyle.
Mhm,
And so, yeah, after I got out of college, I started my first business, but it was a retail store, but it still involved food, but it was a retail store. So it could keep, manage the hours a little bit better. But anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But so I understand what you're talking
mhm,
about, but it is, I think, I told my kids this. I never wanted them to wait tables or 10 bar when they got, out of high school and started, doing things, because I think what happens is you get lured in by the fact that you're walking around with tips, and you can make,
mhm,
$1,000, $2,000 a week in tips, maybe even more, and you go home with cash every night, and you
mhm.
get lulled into that. Like, you can make a career out of it, but it's not the best career choice, I think.
Yeah. It has diminishing returns, doesn't it?
It
When you get
does have
older,
diminishing returns.
huh?
I think the restaurant business itself, not fast casual, but the restaurant business, sit down
Mhm.
restaurants, right? To me, it's almost diminishing returns, right? Because you're constrained by time and space. And so how do you grow the business every year other than, raising prices or trying to do incremental sales? I don't know.
Yeah, I concur. I've kept one eye on it, over the years, and it's definitely changed, a whole lot. It's definitely a different operating environment than it used to be.
Yeah. So what are some of the most important financial concepts that you wind up teaching a lot of business
Mm,
owners? Because a lot of business owners sort of get into it and they don't necessarily have an education in finance
sure.
or
Yeah, great question, Phil. My main thing is keep it simple. So I always thought as I was going to school, I was going to get out of school, get this degree, and I was going to be calculating the present value of future cash flow of uneven multiple cash flow streams. And I was dead wrong.
yeah,
So what got me was, when I was growing up, my parents, my teachers, my mentors, they were doing all these calculations in their heads.
yeah,
Okay. And when I got out, I got lucky. I got a chance to work with three billionaire business families in my career. And I found that they were doing the same thing. They were doing everything very simply. And I was just amazed.
yeah,
I'm like, hey, this is what so that's number one. Let's keep it simple. And then let's understand that, 95% of my clients are excellent at their trade and only 5% really understand the finance piece. So,
right,
I'm there to help. So number one, we got to keep it simple.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's interesting. I think that a lot of even startups, even startup businesses that we work with on the marketing side, we wind up getting involved in helping them in a lot of other ways because they just don't they maybe don't understand how to analyze a problem very well, or from a financial aspect, right?
Right.
So anyway.
I have a client, Phil, and I've been together with him a long time. He still doesn't understand the statement of cash flows. So I'm walking, down the aisle in the Home Depot on a Saturday morning, right? At like 9 o'clock, my phone rings. It's him. He's like, man, I'm looking at this statement of cash. So again, I'm like, I told you don't worry about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't do
yeah,
it without me. That's what I'm here for.
yeah,
So he's a very successful guy, and it's never gotten in the way of his success.
yeah. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges you face as a coach? Because some I can only view it from my perspective, right? And
Hmm.
which is when we talk to clients, sometimes we have clients that are willing to hear it, willing to listen,
Hmm.
willing to make changes. And then there's a lot of people that
Yeah.
even though they hired you,
Yeah.
they're almost don't care what you have to don't care what you have to say.
You just hit the nail on the head. Um, you know, in my opinion, it's the most difficult part. Um, you know, we're human beings. We're by nature, some of us are resistant to change. We don't like it. And then, you know, you're on the hot seat and you got to listen to your advisor, and you really don't want to do it. And in some cases, you really have to do what you know, your finance person or your marketing person or your salesperson is telling you, you know. So that would be it, is when some of the recommendations that you know are going to be very impactful, they don't get executed.
Yeah. So what's your philosophy? What's your financial coaching philosophy other than keep it simple? When you go in and you start, you go in and you start doing your analysis with people
Uh,
and you're really trying to help get them, to another level.
yeah,
Sort of how,
right.
what's your philosophy? What are you doing?
I tell the client straight up, I like to use the old fashioned, stories and stuff. I'm telling them straight up. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Okay. So, it provides a little humor, but it is the truth. I'm like, look, some of this stuff you're going to say, hey, I've been here 25 years. I've run this business fine. Who are you? What do you want? Why should I even listen to you? So I do the best that I can to present it very simply. I learned that lesson early on. The simpler, the better. No one has time for it. If you have to explain it in more than 25 words, you really don't understand it. I think that's what Buffett says, Warren Buffett.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
so it's good enough for me. So keeping it simple, and um, that's really the main thing. And not getting, I don't. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't phase me. If they don't want to listen, it's their prerogative. I am there to help. I'm a helper. I'm a small part of a big team.
But most people must know there's a problem, right? If they're coming out to hire you, they must know they have a problem, right? Somewhere along the line. Because you can't just walk in and say, hire me, and they go, okay, yeah, Manny, we like you, we'll hire you.
Yeah. The problem. Some people, in my experience, they want validation. They want validation. These business owners, that, hey, am I on the right path to get to where I want to go financially? Then I need somebody that I, you know, like, and trust to validate that for me.
Yeah.
And that's usually how it starts,
Yeah.
and hopefully how it starts, because we really don't want to get there if there's the quote unquote problem. It might be too late to help. Yeah, I've had that happen before.
So you went to college, you got your degree, you got your
Mhm.
graduate degree, and then you immediately went and hung out a shingle. Why not go and work, you know, in the world?
Oh, I did. I did. I might have misspoke. I got my graduate degree. My graduate advisor at the time, she's like, I wanted to be an investment banker. She's like, no, no, no. You need to go into corporate banking. You need to go find a training program that's formal, because they're all getting cut for cost reasons. And I did. I moved to Dallas, Texas,
Did you really?
and I found that bank, and I was very blessed. I drove down there in my 1982 Corolla and chased this guy around that big state. And that's how I got my job, because he kept changing the interview location on me. And I'm from Baltimore. And I'm like, York Road? Oh, man, that's, it's 2 miles away. Well, over there, the roads are 40 miles long. So, yeah, I did get practical experience. I went through the program, and I was in corporate banking about 10 years,
In Dallas?
working primarily in Dallas and in Irvine, California. They moved me out to California
Wow.
after I passed through the training, and you know they trusted me. But I was working in mergers and acquisitions at the time, for larger companies, and I got a chance to see how the big companies do it. And I was like, you know what, the smaller and medium sized companies, these big consulting firms don't want them as customers. It doesn't make economic sense. I'm like, there's some, they could benefit from this. These are the people that could really benefit. So that's what attracted me to giving it a try. But I was scared to do it in Southern Cal, Phil. It's such a big place. You can be anonymous there your whole life. It's not like this, small city that we live in. So that's why I moved back home and hung the shingle out.
What do who do you think does it better? Who do you think watches? Let me think about how I want to phrase this. Who do you
Uh,
think pays attention to the numbers more? the huge companies or the small to medium sized business guys?
Well, that's a tough question. I think the big guys, especially if they're public. I mean, if they're public, they're living and breathing, making that earnings estimate every quarter, right? Because everybody's got stock-based incentive comp. Um,
Yeah,
and they might have thousands of guys on staff, like you and me, right? But the
yeah,
smaller people, it's a little boring if what you do, if you're a marketing wizard or if you're, a specialty consultant in another field. Let's say you're an HR consultant or you're a manufacturer, you're making stuff out of metal or something. It's like, man, the finance is boring,
yeah.
you know? Yeah. It's not the
I,
first thing
I
that you want to do.
I found that, again, in my opinion, the really good small to medium sized business guys, really in their head, like you said before, in their head, they know what their costs are every day, and they know, and they're figuring it out every day. They're thinking payroll, they're thinking, what I've got. And I think that they have a better grip sometimes on um, their true cost of doing business than
Mhm.
the bigger companies, because the bigger companies are so siloed that you get down to these, business unit managers, who are focused on their business unit, but they don't really. They could probably squeeze 3, 4, 5 points out of margin if they managed the bottom a little bit better.
Mhm.
You know, that's just what I've
I think
seen.
that's a great point. I had a client that was, in a contracting business. And then as we were sitting there just talking outside, we got to the point where I asked him, "Hey, how would you cost this job out?" And just right from his memory, he did not need pencil or paper. Thank God that I got trained the same way. He said, "Here's how I would cost it out." So I immediately figured out the percentages. I'm like, "Man, you're golden. You've just got an expense problem here. You don't have a
Yeah,
margin problem." We figured that
yeah,
out in 2 seconds, you know,
yeah.
based
Well,
on his knowledge.
we have a really large client, huge, multi-billion-dollar company, Fortune 100,
That's
and
awesome.
we do marketing for them, and we do some other things, social media and things. And every year, their fiscal year ends in November or October, and every year, right around this time, they'll come to us and say, we have to spend a certain amount of money.
Mhm.
One year it was $780,000. We have 4 months to spend this $780,000. I said, well, I don't know if I can spend $780,000 on ads and get you a return. I don't care. I just need to spend it, because if I don't spend it, I won't get it in my budget next year. And
Oh,
I'm
wow.
thinking, well, if we're hitting the sales number and we're hitting the margin number and you're profitable, maybe you don't need the $780,000 next year. Maybe, if you spend it, I mean, and I started thinking about it going, well, I know the scale of the company. I know the size of the company.
Mhm.
We've met with the CEO and the president of the company numerous times. And I'm thinking, if every single one of their business units, and they probably have 25, 30 business units, if everybody did that, that's a lot of money.
Mhm.
And I start to think that as you go through, because businesses have ebbs and flows, right? Especially big ones. And they get to this point where, well, profitability is a problem, so we have to start laying people off. But maybe, just maybe, if they started looking at it every year and didn't do those kinds of things, they wouldn't um, have to lay people off. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But I think it's because I've never had a small to medium sized a guy doing $100 million in sales. I've never had him come to me and say, I got to spend, I got 3 months to spend, 200,000, and I don't care about the return, because those guys are all about, if I'm going to spend $1,000, I want to, 4x ROAS on that $1,000 or 5x,
Uh-huh.
So anyway,
That's my second piece. So number one is keeping it simple, and number two is insisting very politely that business owner keeps a cushion in that business. you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
you know, that's the second one. Do we have to spend this 700 grand? What are you going to do if you have an ebb or a flow? Right?
exactly. You,
You know,
you can't always rely on your bank line of credit. You can't always
right.
rely on, your credit cards in some cases. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's I think it's a big I the only time I ever worked in a big company was I had started this I had started these stores down in Washington D.C. and retail stores, and then I started a website to sell meals. This is at the dawn of the internet, and we wound up selling the business to a supermarket chain, big one.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was a big supermarket chain, and I had to go and work for them. That was part of the deal. Was I had to go and work for them for like 2 years, and I just found the whole process to be inefficient. I find that people that they built teams not based on their need, but because somebody wanted more people in the team, and half the time they weren't optimizing that team. And I just think that if business really looked at every single cost, they could
Mhm.
probably increase their profitability by 10-15%. That was
We
just from observation.
we share the same philosophy. As a matter of fact, that's like one of the first things that I do when I start working with a client is like, you know what? Let's take a look at every expense in here and how does that expense show me the direct line to revenue,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think it's a good one. You have any great stories, success stories, failure stories that you could share with us about?
Oh, sure.
You don't have to mention names, but
Yeah. So I have it's a former client now, but real interesting story. You know, he starts out as a salesman in a company and he's good at selling. And then the opportunity presents itself for him to purchase the company.
yeah,
But he needs a partner, but he's got a buddy. That's they're good buddies, and the buddy's a entrepreneur. He's in all kinds of businesses. So they get together and buy this company, and they start growing this thing. And my customer's getting to a point where you know, he's considering, what he's going to do next. He needs an exit strategy. He was a little unclear on that. And then after, a lot of decision making, he decided to go the private equity route.
mm,
Um, and then he has been, joining up with this private equity firm. It's been wildly successful from an economic perspective for him. But by the same token, it was completely different than what he was used to because he was
yeah,
concerned about his employees,
yeah, yeah,
and that's been an interesting thing where he started making pretty much, he was probably making 50, $60,000 a year as a salesperson.
yeah.
And it took a lot of guts, and to have that friend and to be on the same page. And he managed to do that within 20 years.
That's great.
Yeah. So that's a good one. The other stories I don't really talk too much about. I have one client that calls me a fear monger
Oh,
sometimes because I'm always saying you got to keep a cushion, you got to keep a cushion, right? Everything you just said, Phil. Can't trust that bank. If you show a loss and you go to your banker with a loss on your statement, the chances are they might not lend you the money.
yeah. They might see a
You
problem.
know, so you don't want to hang your hat on that. You want to. I always tell them, always put yourself in a position where you have choices. I got another quick one, a funny one. So the same guy that did that costing in his head, right? Same guy. So he was using the yellow pages to advertise his business for like 25 years.
Mm,
And then, this internet thing came out and all that stuff. Well, he had a little ebb and flow in the business. So when I came in, I looked at the statement. I'm like, wow, you sure are spending a lot of money on these yellow page ads. I mean, it was like several $100,000
yeah.
annually. I told him, I said, look, I said, if I'm at my parents' house and they need your service, I am not going to ask them where the yellow pages is.
Right.
I'm going to whip out my phone. I'm going to Google. He's kind of looking at me for your service, and I'm going to do what my parents taught me: get my three estimates. Then they'll make their decision. Well, I said, you know what? You could probably divide that 200 by 10, right? And then actually make 10 times more from it. He's like, there's something wrong with you. You're nuts. Who is this guy? And it took him about a good year to get comfortable. But he made the transition,
And
made
I'm
the
sure
transition,
it worked out.
changed his business,
I'm sure
and
it did.
he was able to laugh about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, I've done this for 25 years and that's my wheelhouse, it's my sweet spot. And you're some stranger coming in here telling me I got to change,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So,
It's amazing that there are still people out there,
mhm,
still, and still businesses that do spend money on forms of advertising that I just wouldn't do. Television
mhm,
is one, right? Because there are people out there just running ads on television, and when you could
mhm,
do, you know, OTT advertising on television where you're advertising to a direct audience. Because let's face it, you log into Netflix, we know who you are, right? You log into YouTube Live, you log into any Max, HBO Max, everybody, they know who you are. So now I can deliver an ad directly to you. I can say I want to deliver an ad to a guy that's this, does this and performs this and does that. Whereas television is just all about impressions, but impressions don't translate into conversions all the time.
mhm,
And we try and explain that to people. You can take that, 4 million or 5 million that you're putting on television ads, and we can direct it, into OTT ads and get a better return and at least know who we're talking to versus
right,
because I learned, unfortunately, I learned that the hard way in my own experience of doing television
mhm,
back, 15 years ago when I had the shaving business. We did television ads, and it drove me nuts because you're listening to these media buyers telling you that, oh, you want to be on this channel, you want to be in this channel, and it was never correct. What mattered was how much you were spending on the spot relative to, your sales for that spot. And television, you can't track.
mhm.
OTT TV, you can track. So,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. And you can put
Yeah.
QR codes on those spots now. You see them when you log in. I
Mhm,
don't know if you watch, if you're watching Netflix or you're watching
mhm,
Max or Peacock or any of those channels. You can you know who that person is, and who you can
right.
see if that person does anything with your ad, and then you can retarget them online. So yeah, you can. It's much more efficient and effective way of spending money. There are still people that do what do you call it? Direct mail, which
Hmm.
I have a hard time with. We have
I didn't know that.
Oh God, we have people out there, that companies that are still doing direct mail, and I say you get a point, like a 0.12 return on that. How can you possibly think that that's working for you? But
Right.
they swear that it does, and I don't believe it. And they spend millions on it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, Gillette just stopped doing it about 4 or 5 years ago. They used to send the razor in the mail, and their newest razor. They would send it to you in the mail, and then you would try their new razor and hopefully go out and buy the replacement cartridges.
I do remember that when I used to use that product.
They stopped. They only
Mhm.
stopped about 5 years ago,
Yeah.
and I was like, you should have stopped 15 years ago. But
Right.
what are you going to do?
I have another
Um,
one for you.
that'd be great.
Yeah. So I had a situation where, this business was busy. Everybody was just running around, working their tails off every single day. And then there's no money. There's, you know, not enough net. So I start looking at this thing together with the business owner, and I'm like, when's the last time you kind of did all the math here in terms of, you know, he's like, I said, okay. So he's like, we're so busy, I can't understand why we're not making any money,
Yeah.
right? Because they're busting butt every day. So we looked at it, and his equation in that costing wasn't accurate. That's why he wasn't making any money. And it was a pretty big company. They had grown it from nothing. So what I noticed, well, I always say, I'm going to sit down with you. You're going to give me the ins and outs of your business model, and I'm going to show you the most efficient and profitable way to run it. Like, how are you going to do that? Well, I looked at his P&L presentation, and it was only revenue minus expenses equals net income. I said, this is not helping you.
Yeah.
I said, you need a quick way to be able to, see stuff. You need to look at this exactly like a banker. Your banker looks at it, or like an investor. You need to have the same information they do. So we changed the presentation and created that cost of, in their case, labor line, so they could
Yeah.
pop a margin out, gross profit margin, and we could do some comparative analysis together, which is
Yeah.
what I do every month with each client. Is a full-blown, it doesn't last long, an hour, but we do a full-blown review of
Yeah.
the financial, and it brings about questions, and the owner answers them, and we can spot these negative trends early before they take root.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
business turned around real fast. They were like, oh my God, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It is funny how, again, we do, even though we do a lot of business with, you know, brands that have been out there, whether they're still growing or, 50 to 100 million or more. We do a lot of work with startups, and
Right.
because we like that, we like entrepreneurs and startup guys.
Mhm.
We don't do it often, only if we're really interested in what they're doing. But it's amazing to me. The focus is always on, you know, the focus is always on. I made this great product, and I built this beautiful website, and now people have to start buying it. You go, well, you didn't leave any money in there for marketing. You didn't leave any money in
Yeah.
there, for operating the business. You think that people think that, or entrepreneurs think that in some cases, I just build this product, put it on the internet, and people are going to come, and they don't realize they have
Right.
to start spending against it. And then when they
Uh-huh.
do start spending against it, we have to teach them, the metrics that, if you're going to spend $1,000 on ads or $2,000 on ads, we have to make sure that we're getting something for it. You can't just, and ads may not be the right thing to spend money on, because
Hmm.
I've always been very top line focused. I always focus on sales first and foremost, because
Yeah.
without sales, and we've seen people go into companies and start, managing the costs to a point where they start cutting, but then you're at the point where you're cutting too much and your sales suffer. You've got to,
Mhm.
you got to focus on sales. You've got to focus on sales, make the sales
Yeah.
profitable, and that's how it sort of flows down. In my mind, that's always been the way
I
I've done
concur. I think we're cut out of the same fabric. We share the same philosophy. Seriously, I tell them, be very careful when you're cutting. You're choosing to cut, that you don't hurt this operation. All right. If you guys don't sell, there's nothing to analyze. It all starts and ends with a sale that is mutually beneficial
it.
for
Yeah.
you and your customer. Then the rest of the stuff, happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a client now that we're going through that with. They're a brand that's been around for 30, 40 years,
Wow.
and ran into a little trouble, hired a new CEO who's more of a financial guy, and he's cutting and deleting, rationalizing SKUs and deleting, but it's having a negative impact on sales. And his philosophy is, I'd rather have less sales, more profitable. I keep saying, well, if the sales keep declining, you're never going to get there. You're never going to be profitable, because they're just going to keep declining, and your fixed costs aren't going anywhere.
Right.
So, you should be focused on selling more, because he's over analyzing every single thing. It's like, well, if we don't have a 3.5 minimum ROAS, we can't run the ad. You're like, dude, you know, we'll get there. You're not going to get there out of the gate. You're not going to get there the first week, but you'll get there in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. So,
Mhm. What is that? Educate me.
Oh,
ROAS?
return on ad spend. Return on ad
Okay.
spend.
Thank you
ROAS.
for educating me.
Yeah, return on ad spend. So if you're going to spend a
Mm.
dollar, you know, in the old days, it was difficult because the reason that I love e-commerce is because everything is measurable. I know if I spend, $10 on an ad here or, $1,000 on an ad here, I know what my return is, right? I can see it. I can track it through the website. I can see how many orders I got, how many conversions I got, all that. In the old days, right? You ran a newspaper ad, you ran, you know, uh, uh, a TV ad, you ran an ad in the yellow pages. The only way you knew is if somebody told you, "Oh, I saw your ad in the yellow pages." But
Wow.
again, if I spent
Mhm.
$10,000 on yellow pages ads, but I got two customers out of it and they spent $2,000, that's sort of not a good equation. But people would still do it. Newspaper, magazine, television ads, but it wasn't as easily trackable. Certain people put coupons in or codes, things like that, and did their best to track it. But today, in my opinion, everything should be it can be tracked and should be tracked. And then you figure out we have a we have a client now who's growing. They started up about a year ago, and they're doing over $200,000 a month in sales with their product, and they're not spending any money on ads. They're just doing
Mhm.
TikTok videos and doing them
Wow.
well, and it's phenomenal to me.
Amazing.
We're helping them in a lot of different ways, but it's just amazing to me and they're young guys, and they figured out that um, they figured out how to really hit that nerve with the viewer, and they're killing it. They're killing it. And now
Wow.
the question is, okay, where we came in is, can we move them onto other platforms and experience the same thing? And are we going to have to spend ads? Can we get them on Amazon and spend that same, or and not have to spend as much on ads, because they're so used to not spending money on ads that they don't want to spend money on ads. And I think they're going to have to at some point. But it's just amazing to me what you can do. And then there's some guys that we know that are doing 10, 20, 30 million dollar a year businesses that were probably a third of their sales were coming off Amazon, and now they're
Wow.
trying to get off of Amazon and move over to
Mm.
TikTok because they figured out an equation of using influencers or micro influencers to promote their product versus what was happening on Amazon.
I did
Amazon's a
not know that.
yeah.
Thank you for educating me.
Amazon was a great, we've been selling on Amazon since 2006, and we're good
Wow.
at it. We help all kinds of brands do it. And it used to be great, but now it's getting more and more difficult to be profitable. And so people are looking for other ways to get to the customer, you know. And social selling, what we'll call social selling, has been out there for a while, but it's never taken hold like it has with TikTok. It's been
Amazing.
incredible what's happening on TikTok.
I did not know that. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. And not just for not I'm not talking about just for product companies. We have a we have companies that are industrial that are doing things
Wow.
with video that are getting clients out of it. It's
Wow.
hysterical. Oh yeah. It's a it's
That
a
is
video world.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We've transitioned our agency, over the last 2 years to be able to support more video. I've got creative people that's all we do is we build, videos for our clients and content like that. And because there's so much, uh, you know, the, I don't know how much time you spend on, social media, but people will sit there and watch reels and YouTube shorts and TikTok videos for hours. And that's people don't want to read anymore. People don't want to look at static images. They want it fed to them, and video is easy for them to feed to.
I did not know that. Thank you again, Phil, for educating me. I'm gonna have to check it out. I still do old-fashioned stuff. Primarily LinkedIn, and I didn't really feel like I could make an impact on TikTok, but I'm definitely going to check it out.
Even LinkedIn,
You know,
right? Even LinkedIn, if you look at LinkedIn, it's more video focused lately. In the last year, there's more people posting videos every day than there are just static images, right? So
we'll have to take another look.
yeah, you sort of have to have you have to sit down and figure out what your approach is going to be, what your niche is going to be. But you know, so anyway, let's get back to Manny and keep that conversation going. How do you there's a million there's a million guys out there doing financial coaching, right?
Yeah.
I get hit up on LinkedIn constantly.
Uh,
How do you differentiate yourself from that?
Great question. Um, so I am here for you, for the business owner. I am here to help you get to wealth, security, fulfillment, and comfort in your business. I wish I could have, had that in my mind 21 years ago. But that's basically what it took, was all this time, experience, my teachers and mentors. That's what I offer, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm looking at this business and I'm helping you get to those four things: wealth, security, fulfillment, and comfort.
Yeah,
I've been very blessed. My business grows through referral. And like you said, there's a lot of people. There are thousands upon thousands of competent financial professionals. I do not consider myself as having any competition. I believe that we are all going to make you lasagna. It's going to be tasty and it's going to satisfy you. Now, you, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, business owner, you need to make a decision. Which chef do you want to work with? You want to work with Guy Fieri? You want to work with Rachel Ray? You know, Julia Child, in your face Manny? Which chef do you want to work with?
yeah,
That's how I look at it.
yeah. That's interesting perspective.
Mhm.
So you have a book that you wrote. What's that all
Yes.
about?
I wanted to write a book and I was very blessed. Wrote a book and actually found a publisher to publish it. The book is called Ultimate Profit Management: Maximizing Profitability as You Grow Your Business. And you can find it on Amazon. So I had all these teachers, mentors, all these lessons, and I kept saying, like, kept seeing the same movie over and over again in all these clients.
Yeah.
Um, Bootstrapping, it's a very old concept,
Oh yeah.
but that's how it's done. And the majority of businesses are bootstrapped. And I felt as if over like the last 17 years since the last downturn, now we only hear about unicorns and billion-dollar valuations and how much funding did you get this round? And I was like, you don't even hear about it anymore. But that was the thing that kind of pushed me over the edge. I'm like, you know what? Let me write a book with all the lessons in it. It's not a textbook. It's not boring. That was priority one. Can't be boring. It is
Yeah.
entertaining. There's social proof in it. I think it's a fun read. Because I don't like reading boring stuff. So I go through it. Um, when should I hire? Before, during, or after? Kind of what you said. Build it and they will come. No, no, no.
Yeah.
Build it. Tell them you've built it, and then they will come. How do you manage risk? Just all kinds of stuff with stories and what I actually saw unfold, how people were able to work and put in place, a business that they were able to send their kids through school. They were able to take their vacations. They were able to take care of their employees. They were able to donate to their communities. They were able to exit,
Yeah.
successfully. So, these are the things that I touched on uh, in the book. And I'm optimistic that people are going to find it helpful. If you're an existing business owner and you're bootstrapping your way up, or if you're thinking about um, becoming an entrepreneur, this book is something that, in my opinion, will be helpful. That's everything I've been taught.
Yeah. It's you're right about bootstrapping. We've had a lot of entrepreneurs on the show that have talked about that. It's almost like these young guys, these startup guys, go out thinking that raising capital through private equity or venture capital is sort of a badge of honor or something, when it's really not. Um,
Yeah.
I'll, I learned that I had built these stores down in DC years ago, and we needed capital to grow,
Okay.
and we wound up doing an A round and got investment. And when I looked at it, when we were negotiating it, I said, this just doesn't make sense to me. You're going to give me, X million dollars, and you're going to take preferred shares, but those preferred shares come with a warrant for common. And so when we exit, you get paid out first on the preferred shares plus your interest, but you still hold common equal to the percentage of preferred. So that just seemed like an expensive loan to me. And we wound up doing it because we needed to grow and we needed the capital. But um, when I talked to friends who also did A rounds and B rounds and C rounds, and by the time they had the idea, they started the business, they took the early risks, but by the time it was all over, they owned 5% of the company or 10% of the company. And which isn't bad. I mean, obviously, if you build a $500 million company, it's better than having owning 100% of $1 million company. But
All
at the
right.
same time, it didn't sit well with me. And so when I did my next business, I I raised capital uh, um, from what do you call it? From partners, from
Okay.
strategic capital, from like our manufacturer put money in, and our some other people put money in, and it was a lot better because it was 1 to 1. You invested 10,000, you got $10,000 worth of equity. You didn't get $10,000 worth of equity plus warrants plus interest. And even when we did the shaving company, we had one of the major razor brands was supplying us, and they invested in it. And so
Wow.
we,
Awesome.
yeah, and it was a lot
Mhm.
better for us. Certainly, we raised capital from individuals and things like that, but it just the whole private equity piece of, um, you know, I think bootstrapping is a much better way of doing things, and you have a much better appreciation. Plus, a lot of these other guys, the other problem with it is a lot of these guys go out too early looking for money, and when you go out too early looking for money, then you have no leverage. You have no, you can't sit there and say, well, I don't need the money. I have options, right? If I can get from 0 to 10 million without taking money, and I've got 10 million in sales, then I've got options because I can go to a bank, I can get a line of credit, I can do different things. Certainly I can't grow as fast as I can if somebody puts in
Yeah.
10 million, but you know, that's how I look at it. So I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, growing without profits is no good.
No,
Now, there's going to be people that come from other schools, and yes, there's theorems and corollaries involved when you have a software business and you're trying to get users. But for the average person, in my opinion, based on my experience, why are we going to grow this business from 1 million to 3 million and not make any more money?
yeah,
And take all this risk, and then have this false assumption because times have been so great since the last downturn. We automatically think that the bank will lend us money if I get in a jam. And I have to deliver that message all the time because I have CEOs that are in their late 30s. And I have to tell them, when last time there was a downturn in this country, you were like 21 years old.
yeah.
You were trying to figure out what cologne to wear out tonight, you know, right? And I tell my lady CEOs, you were trying to figure out where to go get your hair done when you
Yeah,
were 21. Now you're running a $15 million a year company, right? Pushing 40, but you haven't seen a downturn.
yeah.
So,
Well, we saw COVID, you know,
right.
we definitely
Yeah.
saw that.
Yeah.
And that
Thank you
was,
for correcting me.
yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily a downturn, but it was weird.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I should speak clearly next time. That a downturn where they're throwing money at you. You know what I mean? Thank you for the lesson. I'll be careful when I say that next time.
Yeah, no, but it's true. I mean, we did COVID was
Uh-huh.
it was an eye opener for a lot of us.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
well, Manny, I've got to wrap this up. We're running out of time. Any parting words, any words of wisdom for anybody? And again, talk about where people can find your book. Where can people find Manny, and get in touch with you?
Okay. You can find me at portalcfo.com. And the book Ultimate Profit Management is available at Amazon. And the parting words are be patient. I know this is easier said than done. I have been overly ambitious my whole life. Now I'm just ambitious. Try to be patient. It just takes time. It takes time to get there. So
Yeah,
be patient and always put yourself in a position as a business owner where you have choices.
yeah, yeah. It's good advice. All right, I got a couple of parting things to do. I got to run a quick thing. I've got about 3 minutes, so I'm going to pop you out. You can hang out in the green room if you want to. We can
Sure.
recap after it's over.
Yeah.
I just have a couple of things to do. All right.
Yeah. Let's do it. Thank you, Phil.
All right. So it's good to understand that type of thought process, right? You're not everybody has a financial coach. Not everybody has, and not everybody can afford to have a financial coach, but they should, because again, we see it all the time with brands that we do business with, where uh, some of the pieces I've talked about, where they're spending money needlessly, or they don't really have a handle on their costs, they don't really have a handle on their KPIs. So it's a good exercise. So Manny's got a book. Look for it on Amazon. Um, should be a good read. And as far as we've got a couple of great shows coming up, a couple of great entrepreneurs coming up that you're going to love. Primarily, we do have some AI coming up. Everybody's loving AI right now, and we have some folks that are doing. We've had chatbot guys on building AI. We've had AI with Engage, which does LinkedIn posts for you. But we've got a couple of good ones coming up with ads and video ads that are I think really more advanced than they were 6 months ago or a year ago. So it'll be interesting to hear what those folks have to say over the next couple of weeks. And for us, thank you for thank you for tuning in tonight, and we'll see you next time. In the meantime, if you need us, you can always go to philmasiello.com or crunchgrowth.com, either one, and you can get in touch with us. We've got plenty of content on those sites to help you out, and we've got a couple of great downloadable free books. One's a business planning guide on philmasiello.com, and then one's sort of a marketing planning guide on Crunch Growth. So, give us a shout, and love to see you. Love to hear from you. Have a good night.